Good morning, and welcome to this Sunday morning service here with the Eno River Unitarian Universalist Fellowship here in Durham, North Carolina. We gather on the land that has been home at different times to the Eno, Shakori, Sissipaha, Saponi, and Lumbee people. I'm Reverend Deborah Cayer. I'm the lead minister here at Eno River. And whoever you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, welcome. We're glad you're here. If you're visiting with us for the first or second time, please just introduce yourself in the chat box. You'll find a warm welcome, and you'll also find a link to some more information about us there. At noon today, we are offering an inquirer's class. This is a great opportunity for anyone who is looking for more information about who we are and what we do here. Today's topic is Unitarian Universalist history, including the history of this fellowship. A little bit, little snippets, and lots of chances to ask questions. It's great. We especially ask people who are considering membership to take this series of classes. Today at noon, also, the coordinating team is hosting a budget forum, and the board is going to join us there. We want to share an update about this year's finances, this current year's finances, and then we also want to look ahead to what we're considering for our budget for next year. We have so many questions and so many ideas, and we really, really need to know what our members think. So you can find the link to that forum on our website, again today from noon until 1 p.m. Also, our board is really busy right now. They're working with the nominating committee, and they're working together to identify people to serve on a ministerial search committee to be elected by the congregation at the annual meeting this coming June 13th. They would really like to hear from you. So if you would like to nominate anyone, including yourself, you can find out how to do that on our website or in this past Friday's e-news. Last week, the CDC and the state of North Carolina both updated their COVID-19 safety policies. And so now, even as vaccines roll out and restrictions are easing, however, the ERUUF campus remains outdoor use only. And our current, the pre-existing COVID-19 guidelines still apply here. The coordinating team is working to update our safety policies and take into account these new, more relaxed guidelines. And our policies are going to be based on the same metrics that the state and the CDC are using. And everything keeps changing. This is complex. We want to get it. We want to make sure that we get it right because so much is at stake, right? So this is going to take a minute. So please stay tuned. We're updating this as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. Meanwhile, you can find information about all of our programs and classes and groups in our weekly e-news or on our website. Here this morning, in this morning's service, I'm joined by Julia Tyler, our Religious Education Director, and we're here to honor the religious education teachers and mentors and advisors from this past year. It's been amazing. And this morning, we're also going to hear from our Generosity Sunday team. So, that's a lot. Our tech members today are Sean Trimble and Jenny Jolly. Scott Gaskins is our sound technician. Kate Lewis is our live musician. And we also have music this morning that was previously recorded by Trilight, and also music from our children's CD. So now at this time, let's just take a breath together. Center yourselves. Just center yourselves in this present moment. And we will continue our service with the Prelude. Our opening words this morning are by Reverend Scott Taylor, slightly adapted. We gather as a community of stories. As we hear from each other, the way becomes more clear. As we weave together the tales of who we are, our loneliness lessens and the web of oneness is revealed. As we listen deeply, we descend into the longings and learnings, the hopes and fears of the humanity we share. Beneath the wells from which we drink, there is a deeper well which nourishes all. Come, let us tell each other tales. Let us build beloved community from the stories that nurture and sustain us. And we light our chalice this morning for all the stories that we share that nurture and sustain this beloved community. Our first hymn this morning is Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. The words will be on the screen and you can sing along.
Over the course of this last year, a devoted group of volunteers have come together to create curiosity-filled, tender religious education. Especially in this last year when life has handed us lemons, this team has made lemonade. It is my great joy to work with these volunteers, people who so genuinely and capably care for our children and families. Let us take this moment now to honor all the ERUUF religious education leaders who've given their time, talent, and love to nurturing our children and youth. We extend our gratitude to the RE teachers of Chalice Children, Books and Cooks, Building Creativity, Neighboring Faiths, Coming of Age, Our Whole Lives, and High School Youth Group. In addition to these 26 weekly volunteer teachers, there are more than 35 additional volunteers who have assisted, presented, coordinated, and supported religious education programs and events, such as our No Rehearsal Christmas pageant, the sock hop, our outdoor drumming circle, pastoral care card making, a Father's Chalice Circle, and Earth Justice collaborative projects. Thank you to everyone who has supported religious education programming in 2020-21. A special thank you to those volunteers who work on a team to lead RE every Sunday. RE teachers, you all have been an incredibly resourceful and inventive, can-do team of volunteers this year. You've been willing to learn new everything, new curriculum, new technology, new teaching methods. We learned and invented our way through a brand new form of RE this year. We've successfully provided space for children, youth, and parents to share how they are really doing and to be seen and cared for in open-hearted fellowship. On behalf of all of ERUUF, thank you so much. We have gifts of taper beeswax candles for all our RE teachers. These candles symbolize the bright lights you've been for our children, youth, and families in dark and worrisome times. Even on an online platform, your lights have shone brightly, inspiring smiles, fun, generosity, clarity, and sweetness. Truly, you all are the sweet sugar in our lemonade. Lauren Palmer, our RE assistant, will mail these gifts out to you this weekend. We know religious education will continue to be full of surprises and change, and we know now that we have the capacity to adapt and greet change. Together, we will continue to meet our mission to raise children with critical thinking skills, excellent questions, and capacity to get through difficult times, including now. We'll continue to offer spiritual and emotional care to children and families. We'll continue to value and prioritize diversity and to build that beloved community that we dream about. Together, we are nurturing a new generation infused with UU values. It takes a village, and we are that. If you'd like to join us in RE this next year, please let me know. This afternoon at 4:30, we are also honoring our young people as they cross the threshold into young adulthood with a bridging ceremony in ERUUF's woods. And now, here is the story of this last year in RE as told through song and images.
This year, I have been one of the teachers for the Books and Cooks Children's Religious Education class. Each week, we gather virtually after Children's Chapel to cook together. We light our chalice, check in about our week, read a story, review our ingredients list, and then cook a recipe inspired by the book that we read. We've made tortillas for El Dia de los Muertos. We've made Hoppin' John for New Year's. We've done cakes and soups and salads, rice dishes. It's been a lot of fun. And as importantly, it's been a meaningful way to connect to the ERUUF community and share a little bit of ourselves. One perk of teaching RE this year has been a unique motivation to clean my kitchen at least every Sunday morning. And another perk of RE this year has been the privilege of watching families work together in their kitchens doing one of the most elemental activities that we as humans do, which is making food. Leading an online children's cooking class is very different from doing it in person in a classroom. In a classroom, everybody would sit in a circle and take turns putting in their one ingredient into the collective mixing bowl. But virtually, each child is responsible for the entire recipe on their own, and they're in their own space. So there's a certain familiarity with the tools and where things go and belong. But I, the teacher, am not in the space with them, so if they need help, I am unable to physically step in. But the families do, and it's been a real privilege to see how the families supporting the children, who normally in a physical classroom I wouldn't get to witness how the families support and help their child, but virtually I can watch and see how the children rely on their family supports to complete the task that's at hand. And this is a very different view than I would get in a physical classroom. So even though I look forward to the day when we can meet together at ERUUF and resume regular RE classes, this year there's been a treasure of special glimpses into the lives of the children that I teach.
Hi, my name is Catherine Adams. I'm 17 years old and I was a youth intern for Building Creativity this year. I grew up at ERUUF. I've never known, my life without ERUUF. So it was really an interesting and incredible experience to be on the other side of a program that I have loved and has shaped me throughout my childhood. I would look forward to RE every Sunday, look forward to youth group every Sunday, and, think about what's our check-in gonna be? What are we gonna do? And so now to be planning that for these kids has been really amazing and really a new perspective to take on. Being excited to, before our first class, being who are my kids gonna be? I can't wait to get to know them. I can't wait to hear how their week went. It's just really interesting to, be able to view your community in a different way and connect with kids that I may have never gotten to talk to, and hopefully teach them things that they will use throughout their life. Hopefully I want to go into a career with kids, possibly as a child psychologist. So, this has really shown me more of the joy of working with kids and getting to hear how their mind works and the milestones of their life, hearing that a kid just had their 8th birthday or they just lost their first tooth. It's just such a special connection that I never would have been able to make without this. So I'm truly so grateful for it and excited to do it again next year.
Friends, the story of your year, the year that you've created with your teams and with your students, it inspires us and it fills us with a sense of love and a sense of hope. And so at this time, we offer you this blessing.
It is important for our children and youth to know that they are cared for, to know that they are part of a larger family, an important part of a bigger human picture.
It's important for our children and youth to believe in themselves, to trust in themselves, and to know that they can make a difference in the world.
It is important for all our people, children, youth, and adults alike, to know our story, to carry our principles into the world, and to live them on a daily basis.
It's important for all our people to be comfortable in their faith and to respect the faith of others, to live with compassion, integrity, service, and joy.
It is important for all our people to shine our lights in the world, to bring justice to all the people, to open ourselves to new ways of learning and being human.
It's important for all our people to allow the spark of our curiosity to arise in our hearts and our minds, to awaken the wisdom that lives deep inside each one of us, and to help each other grow in compassion and strength in a world that is fraught.
It is important for all our people to acknowledge that we are all part of this one community, children, youth, adults alike, and that we welcome the gifts we bring to each other so that we can grow and be enriched by our time together.
We thank you all for sharing your time, your talent, and your love with the children and youth of this beloved community.
Thank you for keeping the light of our Unitarian Universalism faith alive and burning brightly.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
What a good story. How the people in our religious education program and the kids and everyone of all ages took those lemons and made lemonade this year. What a beautiful thing. Thank you for that inspiration. We're going to turn to Generosity Sunday. For over a decade, ERUUF has been sharing our collection plate on days that we designate as Generosity Sundays. To start the process, you can find a form on our website, and you can use that to nominate a local nonprofit that shares a lot of ERUUF's values. Our Generosity Sunday team then reviews those nominations, and they check the organizations against a set of criteria, and they make selections, and they arrange a date for a leader from that organization to come to a service and share what their organization does with us. And now, here are some Generosity Sunday committee members, Susanna Murray and Sam Wones, who are going to share a little bit more about this with us.
Hello, ERUUF. I'm Susanna Murray.
And I'm Sam Wones. On behalf of the Generosity Sunday Committee, we are happy to announce the return of Generosity Sundays. In the past, these Sundays have made a real impact in our community, often raising upwards of $2,000 to local organizations that align with our values.
Because of unknowns related to the pandemic, ERUUF pressed pause on this practice early last year. The pause gave the committee an opportunity to reflect on how to pair ERUUF values with what's happening in the community now. As it always has, the committee seeks nominations of Durham nonprofits that reflect and promote UU principles and values. And we have some updates that reflect ERUUF's inner work on race and address impacts of the pandemic.
These new criteria put a thumb on the scale of funding groups committed to racial equity and inclusion. We also know that class matters, and we're eager to support organizations pursuing economic justice. And especially now, we want to reinforce efforts that acknowledge the disparate impacts, including mental health issues, of the pandemic.
So the common theme is we want to prioritize local nonprofits working to address root causes. Charity suggests a top-down relationship between us and them and may reinforce existing inequities. Solidarity is multi-directional and knows that everyone has resources and wisdom to solve problems. So think solidarity, not charity.
The nomination form is located on ERUUF's website under the Justice heading. You can also find information in the e-news or in the chat if you're watching on YouTube.
So there are two important dates to keep in mind. We need your nominations of local nonprofits by May 16th, and the chosen organization needs your generosity when Generosity Sunday resumes on June 13th.
Thanks so much.
This morning, we're considering stories that have shaped our lives. And this is a meditation by Scott Taylor, again adapted. I invite you to join me now for a time of spoken meditation and a little bit of silence and prayer. Who dreamed you into being? What stories sat in their heart as they imagined what you would become? Who helped you imagine your story? Who helped you see your place in the story of the world? And what matters the most? Who helped you understand that you could be the author of your own unfolding? All of which is a way of asking, who listened? Who listened until you could hear yourself speak as you learned to trust your own voice? And what about those stories of others? Those who come from spaces made narrow and cramped by oppression. The ones whose stories need to be heard by you, held in your heart. The ones whose inherent worth and dignity still needs to be fully recognized and respected, so that justice might roll freely like water. Let's pause for a moment of silence. This morning we hold in our hearts the people of India in their time of pandemic crisis. The family and friends of Andrew Brown Jr. of Elizabeth City, North Carolina, one of the latest victims of a police shooting. The people of our own city who are wrestling with issues of systemic racism in very different ways. In the beauty of this spring morning, we hold in our hearts all who are ill, who are afraid, who suffer and grieve, who are lonely and alone. All who are burdened by too much, who are without time or resources to do all that needs to be done. This beautiful morning, we also rejoice with all who celebrate milestones, graduations, anniversaries, reunions for the first time in over a year. Today, we laugh with joyful children. We cherish our elders. We delight in the beauty of spring. We say it's about listening, but really, it's about love. And it's through listening and loving that we discover our power to create a new story together, a story that has never yet been told. May it ever be so. Amen.
To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace. A time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rent, a time to sow, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven.
One night, many years ago, I was putting my granddaughter Emery to bed when she was 3 years old. Will you tell me a story? She asked. Sure. Once upon a time, and I started a story about a fairy tale with princesses and dragons and trolls, things that she was really interested in at the time. But she stopped me and she said, "No, I want a story like Grandpa tells me." Like Grandpa tells you? Yes, the ones about little Emery. I had no idea what she was talking about. I didn't even know that my husband had been telling her stories about little Emery. Did little Emery fly around like a bird, or was she the president, or did she swim under the sea with the Little Mermaid? I'm not sure I know that story, I said, but I'll give it a try. And so I did the only thing I could think of. I began to tell her the story of the things that she had done that day. And she very quickly got a big smile on her face, and she snuggled under the blankets, and she said, "Yes, that's the one." Stories help us understand who we are and how to live. Tom Corson Knowles writes, "When you tell a story, you spark a connection. That is how humans have communicated since the beginning of time, by telling stories. Stories have been told since even before humans learned to read and write. Everyday events became stories to tell children. Scribes and priests told stories of religious affairs, and leaders told heroic tales of their adventures. These stories have passed on through generations, and some of them fill up history books, and some are integral to culture, and some are embedded in family values. Tom Corson Knowles. Stories are that important. They create individuals and families. They create entire cultures that last for a really long time. So think about it for a moment. What are the stories that have shaped your life? What stories did you love as a small child? And a few years later, what books did you look forward to taking out of the library to carry home and to read by yourself? What stories got you through middle school and high school? What were the stories that told you what it means to be an adult? What stories did you learn in synagogue or church? How have stories shaped your inner life? Maybe not so much your mind, but your moral character. The stories we hear, that we watch, help us understand how to connect with other people and their feelings of joy and hope and love and success, and also their pain and their failure, their brokenness, their suffering. What children view on screens is especially important because along with family members and real-life friends, stories also help kids learn about the behaviors that are okay and the consequences that might result if their behavior is not okay. Or they can distract children with false promises about how to be happy and successful with lies like cheating and bullying are the way to succeed. Stories can also show us what we have in common with others and how to understand and manage our differences. There is some recent research that shows that both children and adults who read fiction are more empathetic. Fiction readers are better able to understand how other people feel and how they think, and they're more easily able to take perspectives other than their own, and they're more likely to have emotional intelligence and know how to use it appropriately. There's a proverb that says, "Those who tell stories rule the world." At present, it seems pretty clear that we are in the middle of an epic battle to rule the world, and the factions all have competing stories. Thinking about how close we came to a coup on January 6th, I began to imagine what might happen if a large group of children were to take over the Capitol armed with storybooks. What if they made legislators sit down and really listen to the stories that the children love? And what if the kids stayed and they talked to officials for a really long time? As a small child, I loved Margaret Wise Brown's The Little Island because a character in the story discovers that underneath the water, the island isn't separate. It's connected to everything else on Earth. That image inspired a deep feeling of wonder and love in me at a young age. And it inspires me still to care for the earth as something precious and worthy of respect. We all belong to it. Let's take care of it. The Little Island would be a great story to inform environmental policy. Those who tell stories rule the world, which makes me think of children like Greta Thunberg and Emma Gonzalez. When they've told their stories, they've taken their horror at what's happening to the earth, what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and they've turned it into stories of hope and inspiration and courage. They do this by speaking the truth about their experience. They don't hold back their anger, but they express it with great dignity. Amanda Gorman is older than they are, but she became a poet at about their age, and when Gorman speaks her truth, it has the same effect. It's true, one stirring speaker cannot change the world. The stories from Sandy Hook that we thought surely had to bring about change have not yet managed to change gun laws. However, those stories have changed the minds and the hearts of the American people, who now, in an overwhelming majority, all agree that there should be some changes to our gun laws. Something like 80% of us believe that now. What's also true is that very powerful interests have a lock on the bank accounts of the politicians who are the ones who have to change the laws. What's also true is that when elites don't listen to their constituents, the system that they're on top of cracks and begins to crumble and fall along with everyone else in the system. Their power cannot save them. This isn't just a problem for elites, it's a problem for everyone. But it's one way that significant change can happen. The good news is change doesn't have to come this way through through factions and friction and fissures and systemic failure. There are other ways that change can happen. This year at the Golden Globe Awards, when Jane Fonda accepted an award, she very graciously said thank you, and then she talked about stories. She said, "We are a community of storytellers, and in turbulent, crisis-torn times like these, storytelling has always been essential. Stories have a way to change our minds and hearts. They can help us see each other in a new light, and to have empathy, and to recognize that for all of our diversity, we are all human." I've seen a lot of diversity in my long life, she continued, and at times I've been challenged to understand some of the people that I've met, but inevitably, if my heart is open and if I look beneath the surface, I feel kinship. Fonda went on to point out that stories are different from logical arguments and fact-filled briefings. And she said that religious leaders who've influenced the course of world history have really known how to tell stories really well. All the religious teachers speak to us in stories, in poetry, and metaphor, because the non-linear, non-cerebral forms that are art speak on a different frequency, and they generate a new energy that can jolt us open and penetrate our defenses so that we can see and hear what we may have been afraid of seeing and hearing. Jane Fonda. There's a story in the Christian scriptures that illustrates this so well. It's the story where leaders try to trap Jesus in a legal argument because they want to get him. So picture this. Jesus is walking down the road and he comes upon a group of people who are getting ready to stone a woman to death. She's been accused of adultery, and it's a capital offense. And the officials among them see their chance. Jesus makes them afraid so much that they want to get rid of him. So they pose this question to him. They say, "The law says that she sinned and she should be put to death. Does he agree with that?" They knew that he didn't, and if he said so publicly, that would be grounds for them to have him put away. And that would be the solution to their problem right there. But Jesus was smart. He didn't get distracted by their trap. And instead of answering the question, the story says that he just knelt down and he started tracing circles in the dust with his finger. "Well, how do you respond?" The officials, they got frustrated and they asked. At which point he just looked at each of the people standing there with a rock in their hand, ready to kill. And he said, "Let the one who is without sin throw the first stone." And then he just bent back over and he went back to drawing those circles in the dust. And the would-be killers were so shocked, they suddenly saw the situation differently. And they changed course right there. And instead of killing the woman, they began to slink away one by one. And when Jesus looked up, when they had all gone, all who was standing there was the woman. This is a story about the spiritual genius of nonviolence. It's a story about connecting with an inner power and using that spiritual strength to draw a new frame around a situation. Look at it this way instead of the old way. If you can shock or surprise people into looking at things differently, that's often the moment you can show them a way to change their behavior. The trick is, it's not a trick. It has to be authentic. You have to have done the work yourself. You have to know it in your bones. You have to be that living example. This became the strategy of the civil rights movement more than 70 years ago, because it works. So when I say works, okay, it's not a quick lightning strike kind of strategy. It's indirect. It relies on the power of a moral conscience, which means you have to find people who have a moral conscience, which is always the tricky part. It also means that you have to be in conversation with people who are not like you, who don't understand the world like you do. It means that you have to be willing to face great power when it is arrayed against you. You have to dig down and find your courage and stay there and not run away. In an article, Neil Gaiman and G.K. Chesterton wrote, "Fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten." Yes. That's the power of a story. It can inspire us to take a breath and turn around and face our fear. A story can inspire us to believe that our little slingshot and the 5 smooth stones of our core beliefs can bring down a giant, even when the giant comes from our lineage and our own culture. In the first Black Panther movie, when the young king of Wakanda, T'Challa, was defeated by an enemy, he had to confront the devastating lies in his own family's royal lineage. He had to acknowledge shattering betrayals committed by his own father, whom he loved so greatly. And then he had to find a way to come back from that confrontation to fight for the life of his people and his country. And he did this, and he succeeded, not by himself, but with help from his family and friends. Did that ever happen? Really? No. Is it happening now, this very day? Yes. Because that's the power of an essential story, one that shows us what it means to struggle and wrestle with power. It might not be literally true, but it is so true. It's like the truest of the true things. When the hero suffers this terrible kind of essential wound in this story, something within him dies. And when it does, that's the moment that he or she is able to find a new life, a larger life. And that's the true story. All of us are wrestling with big forces in this time when so much is changing all around us. And just like T'Challa, we're re-examining the stories about ourselves that we thought we knew so well. And we're discovering that oftentimes we have brought our inner child's understanding, and we are trying to use the understanding of a child to understand a complex, definitely not simple, adult world. And the stakes are high, sometimes as high as life and death. And it's so important that we look at these old stories with new understanding. As a child, I adored the Little House on the Prairie books. The writing is so good. You feel like you're right there in the story with Laura and Mary and Pa and Ma and baby Carrie. It was a world of hard work and struggle, and also music and small things that created large satisfactions and love. There was abundant love in the stories. So imagine my shock when I reread these beloved stories as an adult, and I found things that I had never noticed before, things like racism and genocide and colonialism writ large. I had absorbed all of these things without ever noticing them as a child. Learning to see them as an adult has taken work, and that work continues. I can still appreciate the Little House stories. I don't have to totally toss them and give them up, but I do that now with more informed perspectives, knowing more complexity was in those stories and around those stories than I took in as a child. At the Golden Globe Awards this winter, Jane Fonda used her acceptance speech to draw the circle wider for people who had been shut out for far too long. She said, stories really can change people, but there's a story that we've been afraid to see and hear in our industry, the story about which voices we respect and elevate and which we tune out. It's about who's offered a seat at the table and who's kept out of the rooms where decisions are made. So let's all of us, she said, including all the groups that decide who gets hired and what gets made and who wins awards, let's all of us make an effort to expand that tent so that everyone rises and everyone's story has a chance to be seen and heard. Doing this simply means acknowledging what's true and being in step with the emerging diversity that's happening because of all those who marched and fought in the past and those who have picked up that baton today. Jane Fonda. The old story that we've told each other in our dominant culture for so long is falling apart, despite self-serving attempts by people who hold tremendous power to prop it up. What this time of crisis offers us is the opportunity to do more than just sub in a new set of characters for the old ones in the same old story. That is not going to help us now. What will help us is a new story, one that exists, one that is trying to emerge, trying to be born out of impossible circumstances like January 6th and the trial of Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd and the restoration of the Paris Climate Agreements. It's trying to be born out of the struggle in our own state to stop unneeded natural gas pipelines and clean up industries that leave whole communities unable to breathe. So this week, I invite you to run an experiment. You are the subject, and the experiment is so simple. Review the shows that you watch, and just notice the identities of the main characters and the writers and the producers. And then ask yourself, are these people like me or not like me? Just notice. And then do the same for the books on your shelf or the books in your device. Are the characters and authors like you or not like you? When I did this a couple of years ago, I noticed an astonishing thing. All the characters in the shows I liked, the books I read, the stories in my news feeds were very much like me. I hadn't even noticed. So just to see what would happen, I intentionally started adding shows and books that had characters and writers and producers not like me. Guess what? It has been an astonishingly rich experience that's giving me insight into my own unconscious bias toward people who are like me. Wow, who knew that was in there so deep? It was. But with that awareness, I can manage my behavior to be more in line with my values. And guess what? I also got to learn a whole lot more great stories. And then this is a practice that has rippled out into the rest of my life. I've looked at the places where I buy groceries and gas and other places where I do business. The professionals who help me have a good, healthy, secure life. Were they like me or not like me? It was interesting to notice, and when I had choices to consider, I could consider what biases might be influencing those choices. And I have to tell you, these days I feel a whole lot more relaxed as I am more aware of who I am, as I'm more aware of when I'm telling myself an old story and when I'm actually participating in the story that I want to be a part of, that I'm actually trying to help co-create. That kind of clarity just helps it all go better, and I'm more relaxed. Check it out. It is fascinating. Right now, we all really need to listen because it's more than fascinating. Justice is at stake. We need to ask what story is being told. whose voices are allowed to speak, whose perspective is made into policy and law. Whose stories are we listening to that will help us understand the larger we that we talk about? The choices that we make about this will ripple out to help create the story that we will all be part of in the future, the story that we tell our children now, the story that we hope our children will be part of in the future. May it be a good story, an inclusive story, a just story for all. Namaste, friends. Blessed be. Amen. We've got a good thing going on in this congregation. There's a lot of love here and a lot of good stuff. We are the people who create this community. We are the people who take care of it with our time, our talent, and also with our gifts of our money and our financial contributions. At this time, during the offertory, there's a chance for you to make a contribution if you choose on our secure website. Here is the offertory. We give thanks for all that helps to weave the fabric of this beloved community. And I'm going to switch it up here, Jenny. I'm going to do the closing words, and then we'll have our final hymn. So these are the closing words by Terry Pratchett. He says, "There's always a story. It's all stories, really. The sun coming up every day is a story. Everything's got a story in it. Change the story, change the world." That's it, friends. Blessed be. Go in love, go in peace to change yourself and change the story and change the world. Amen.
All my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. Moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. All my life's a circle, all my